Yep, there we go.
He is 50 pounds overweight, and he's a world-class athlete. I mean, you cannot say that Roy Nelson is not a world-class fighter. He's absolutely a world-class fighter.
Roy Nelson knocked out 8 UFC legends and moved millions of pay-per-view buys. And what did Dana White respond with? He started a public criticism campaign that overshadowed his success. He just flatlined a former heavyweight champion, and the UFC's big move was putting him on a scale like a sideshow act. They cashed his knockout bonuses and mocked him all in the same breath. This wasn't about fitness, this was a clash of styles and images. They wanted his violence, but hated his authenticity. Today we're examining one of the UFC's biggest oversights, how they profited from a knockout machine, then moved on from the man behind the bomb. This is the story of Big Country and the significant missed opportunity the UFC will never admit.
It's crazy how the UFC, because obviously they can do whatever they want. Their rules, their league. That's crazy, right? You get suspended, but it's like, no, we'll just shorten it by like 3 weeks and we'll put you right back in.
You know, as long as we can make money. Everybody needs to make money.
That's it. I mean, do you feel like the UFC is going in the right direction, though? I mean, you're still fighting, obviously not in the UFC. You're a veteran. You feel like you're going in the right direction for fighters?
Depends on who you are. If you're in the upper 20, the 20%, then probably not.
Yeah.
If you're on the other side, then you're like, man, this is rocks. I'm a professional fighter. I make $80,000 a year.
He's right, though.
I fight for the UFC.
Oh, my God, he's so right.
I don't do MMA. I do UFC.
Bro, he is so right. I heard fighters fighting in the UFC for free, bro.
Stop.
No, real talk. I don't know how true it is.
It's called the Ultimate Fighter.
Oh my God.
But those guys, they get famous, though. That's what they want, though.
Before he was body slamming giants on pay-per-view, Roy Nelson was laying drywall in Las Vegas. Literally. He wasn't born into fight camps or performance institutes. He was wrestling in high school while holding down jobs. He was sparring after construction shifts, when other prospects were foam rolling and sipping smoothies. He didn't have a six-pack, he had a mortgage, and fists that could stop time. This wasn't a gimmick, it was grit. He wasn't marketable, but he was dangerous. The exact kind of guy the UFC pretends to celebrate until they can't control him. Every gym has a heavy hitter. Roy Nelson was a walking seismic event. It wasn't just that he hit hard, it was how. That overhand right was physics, condensed into meat and bone. His right hand didn't punch, it detonated. Look at the tape. The torque, the timing, the zero tells. Experts said he hit like a truck, but driven by a physicist. He wasn't just slugging, he was calculating. His knockout rate was higher than most champions. Now let that sink in. While others danced and jabbed for points, Roy deleted men from reality. And the scariest part was his training partners weren't celebrity trainers. No sports scientists, no gimmicks, just violence. Then came The Ultimate Fighter Season 10. 16 heavyweights, most with sculpted abs, all with egos. Enter Roy, fat, smiling, unbothered. He slept Kimbo Slice in round 2 with a crucifix and casual hammer fist on the highest rated tough episode in history. He didn't celebrate, he just shrugged. Next, he shut down Justin Wren, then walked through James McSweeney like he was taking out the trash. Because Roy had just broken the game, and the UFC didn't know what to do with a fighter that they couldn't repackage. But winning was just the beginning, because the UFC was about to declare war on their own monster. After winning tough, Roy Nelson entered the UFC with a purpose. And that purpose? To remind every athlete that fighting was still about fighting. First victim, Stefan Struve. 7 feet tall, arms like veins. Didn't matter. Roy walked him down like a man crossing the street. Clocked him with a looping right. Out in 39 seconds. Then came the real one, Mirko Cro Cop, a Pride legend, a killer in his own right. Veterans knew what that left high kick could do. but Roy didn't even flinch. In round 3, he put Crow Cop down with vicious rights and brutal ground and pound, TKO. The crowd erupted, and his legacy of legend killer was solidified. And when Roy stood up, he wasn't flexing. He looked like he just got off of work. Then, check Congo, a tank of a man with dynamite in his hands. Roy timed one perfect right hand. Congo was unconscious before he hit the mat. This was violence at its purest form that many couldn't even fathom. If you put pictures of Congo and Nelson together and ask any casual fan who would win, we all know they'll be saying Congo without a second thought. The working man was knocking out legends, and doing it with a belly, a beard, and no apologies. Oh, and the numbers? Roy's knockouts weren't just brutal, they moved numbers. Pay-per-view spikes, ratings bumps, international searches. The UFC wanted finishes. Roy gave them execution. But they never smiled when he did it, because every time Roy won, he made their poster boys look like frauds. And that was a marketing nightmare for the top brass. Czech Congo was a test, a gatekeeper, a known name. But Roy treated him like a speed bag. Frame by frame, Roy ducked a jab, loaded up, threw that infamous overhand right, lights out. Congo didn't even brace. He was unconscious in free fall. The commentary team was shocked. Medical staff started panicking as they attended to Congo. The fans were loving it. Same thing with Frank Mir, a former heavyweight champ, slick jiu-jitsu, respected name. And Roy, sick with the flu, still made him rethink his life with every punch. Sure, Mir won on the scorecards, but the story that night was Roy's toughness, his refusal to break. The fact is, in the UFC's heavyweight division, at the time where everyone tried to edge out a decision win, Roy held on one of the highest knockout rates. Now let that rattle around. While others danced for decisions, Roy ended careers. But it wasn't just the KOs, it was who loved him. Watch those crowds. Just listen. They weren't chanting for brands. They were cheering for the guy who looked like their mechanic, their neighbor, their uncle. Roy didn't walk into arenas with entourages. He walked in with a mullet and a beer gut. And fans ate it up. His social media exploded. Clips of his knockouts were everywhere. And unlike the cookie-cutter athletes that the UFC kept promoting, Roy went viral, without even trying. Blue-collar fans from Brazil to Boston saw themselves in Big Country. He was real, he was them, and real sells. Roy's fights were consistently among the highest rated of their cards. His name brought attention, his presence brought chaos. And chaos? Well, chaos always sells. Inside UFC headquarters, alarms were going off. Marketing meetings turned tense. This wasn't what the brand wanted. They wanted model athletes, polished smiles, Instagram sponsors. But Roy Nelson showed up in cargo shorts and spun-kicked fools into another dimension. Dana White wasn't shy about not liking Roy. He said,
I try so hard to like Roy Nelson. It's like, I saw him backstage before I came out to talk to you guys. What's up, Roy? You look good. Look at that. And I come out and hear the stupid that he said to you guys right before I walk out there, you know? The guy says the dumbest I've ever heard in my life, and you know, he's very delusional. With his physique and everything, I'm blown away how he can compete at this level, you know, and how talented he is and what a great chin he has. But every time he gets above number 5, he looks like he doesn't belong in the top 10. You know what I mean? You get him above number 5, he doesn't look like he belongs in the top 10. You get him in there with some guys that aren't, and he looks like a world beater. And everybody starts yelling, he should get a title shot. And then you see him fight guys that are athletic and talented and guys that are, you know, and he looks like he doesn't belong in the top 10.
Now, they didn't know how to sell him, so they struggled to figure out how to market him.
Hey, listen, he's a tough guy with a ton of heart. He goes in there and gives it his everything. My thing is, I've always said to him, I'd love to see you take this thing serious and really rip off some weight and try to fight me. When you got a chin like that and a heart like that, you can't deny the guy's got a great chin, a ton of heart, and he can knock people out too. I mean, if he really could get to 205, he'd be a force at 205. He'd be a scary dude. He's got great wrestling, awesome submissions, great shin, a ton of heart, and has knockout power. I mean, who knows what Roy Nelson could really achieve if he applied himself. Do it. You gotta want to get in there, take it serious. Seriously diet, seriously train, and then you're gonna have to cut some weight the day of the fight. For a guy who's gone his whole life, is big. I mean, as long as I've known Roy Nelson, as long as he's been in this business, he's been big. And you don't just. It's not like when you get these guys that fight at 185 and they wrestled their entire high school and maybe college careers, and they're used to cutting weight. They know what it takes. They know how hard it is, and they can do it. So when they make that decision, you know what? I'm going to try to get down to 70. They make it happen.
But what came next wasn't just disrespect. It was systemic image criticism. But Roy's knockout success created an unexpected problem for UFC brass. He wasn't just beating people, he was wrecking their plan. That is when the UFC made their next move. After all the knockouts, the UFC could have leaned in. They could have built around Roy, branded him as the blue-collar wrecking ball of the heavyweight division. Instead, they turned him into a punchline. Every time Roy won, Dana White said the same things. He needs to get in shape. He's not taking it seriously. He looks like he ate the other guy. Now, these weren't offhand remarks, they were all part of a pattern. Roy knocks out legends and gets sent to nutritionists, diet plans, public weigh-ins, commentators cracking jokes about his gut. Behind the scenes, the UFC was cashing knockout bonuses. On camera, they were chipping away at his image. Now let's talk hypocrisy. Roy wasn't the only heavyweight with a dad bod, but he was the only one treated like a liability. Daniel Cormier, same build. Title shots, TV deals. Mark Hunt, bigger than Roy. Fan favorite until legal trouble showed up. Josh Barnett, no six-pack, no fat jokes. Roy, one-punch KOs and non-stop insults. Even as his highlight reels racked up views, the UFC promoted prettier prospects, fighters with half his power and none of the pull. His KO rate beat most of the division, but they never invested in him. They made money off of him and used it to market his replacements. Go watch his interviews. He knew.
If someone paid me to diet, I'd probably do it. But I don't get paid to diet. I get paid to punch someone in the face. As long as I'm under 265, that's all that matters. And that's how I've always fought.
He just didn't play their game. In training, he worked like a middleweight, moved sharp, trained hard. The fans saw it, they backed him anyway. They didn't want models, they wanted winners. But that made him a threat, so the UFC escalated. They didn't just insult him, they moved on from him. After Roy became undeniable, the UFC made a choice. They couldn't stop him, so they matched him to fail. No sluggers, no brawlers, only wrestlers, chain grapplers, guys who stalled action and stole rounds. When he built momentum, they cut it off. 2 knockout wins. They gave him Stipe on 2 weeks' notice. Then Cormier. Then Hunt in Japan, 6 months after breaking his hand. Every matchup drained him. Quick turnarounds, long flights, zero promotion. A slow-motion burial. The commentary changed too. Focused on his cardio, ignored the chin, dismissed the takedowns. Even Joe Rogan couldn't resist the script.
Well, Roy Nelson is a complete anomaly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, he is.
Who looks
Why
like
can't
that?
he lose weight? How is it possible that he trains so hard? I've seen this guy throw around like 130, 155 pound kettlebells, like one arm swings, wing, 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 like it's nothing. They go, you would lose weight, right? You would think, but
He would be a 185-pound phenom. And instead, he's a heavyweight. He's a big contender in
maybe it's an
Bellator, though.
implant in the belly that he just wants to do that. They call it the Buddha belly
You
implant.
can just kick him and not.
Praise the power, then pivot back to the belly. In production, the edits said it all. Slow-mo gut shots, no gym footage, they made him look like a sideshow. Fans pushed back. You're burying your own guy. But nothing changed. Roy still brought in viewers, still knocked people out, but at contract time, he was not marketable. He beat Mitrione, Mitrione got pushed, outdrew Struve, Struve got promo. 4 knockout of the night bonuses, 0 leverage. Other promotions made offers. UFC used them to lowball him. He had one of the highest KO rates in UFC history and got paid like a gatekeeper because it wasn't about wins, it was about control. Roy couldn't be controlled, so they lined up the next guy, Derek Lewis, younger, fresh. Roy took him down 7 times, still lost by split decision. Then beat Bigfoot Silva, then lost to Volkov. In 2016, he was suspended 9 months for kicking referee John McCarthy. And then, silence. No farewell, no tribute, no thank you, just a quiet release. No one said his name again. But the numbers stayed. The stats told a story the UFC wanted to bury, but couldn't. Here is the part that makes UFC execs sweat. Roy Nelson, a guy they mocked on TV, generated more revenue per main event than most of the top names of his division during his era. They laughed at him, but the numbers didn't. 8 knockouts in the UFC, more finishes than most title contenders, more fan engagement than most headliners, and somehow fewer main events than fighters with 2 UFC wins. Let's look at it in black and white. Roy Nelson, 89% KO rate in the heavyweight division. In other words, if he won, 89% of the time it was through a cold-blooded knockout. Top 5 in finishes. One of the most watched tough champions ever. But how many title shots? 0. How many promotional campaigns? None. How many fabricated narratives about his marketability and unprofessionalism? All of them.
Obviously, this season, I don't know if you've heard anything about it, but the big thing is that Roy Nelson and I absolutely do not see eye to eye on anything at all. And I'm just a little worried that more people are going to want to see me fight Roy Nelson at the end of this season than.
This wasn't just mismanagement. This was plain, poor business decision making. And the moment Roy left, the truth followed. Scott Coker saw what Dana White didn't. He signed Roy fast. No hesitation, no lectures, no weigh-in shaming, just respect. Bellator 183, Roy debuts. Javi Ayala across the cage. Roy takes him to a smooth, unanimous decision victory. Dominates the entire fight. Commentary was positive, the fans were loud, and Roy was finally free. In his first non-UFC fight in 8 years. And the numbers showed, the people still wanted Big Country. No politics, no manipulation, just a man and his fists. And Roy couldn't be happier, because for the first time in years, Roy Nelson was getting what he never got in the UFC, a fair shake. Now look at the UFC today. You see it, right? Dad bod fighters, fan favorite brawlers, body diversity becoming acceptable. Daniel Cormier is champion. Tai Tuivasa knocking guys out and dancing with a beer belly. That was Roy's blueprint. He wasn't the first heavyweight to be out of shape, but he was the first to make it undeniable, and that looks didn't matter. But winning did. The same media that once laughed, now they write redemption pieces. Now they admit Roy was done dirty. And the fans, they never needed convincing. They always knew. He was never just a fighter, he was a symbol. But Roy's biggest impact wasn't on fans. It was on the sport's soul. And the lie that he exposed would haunt the UFC forever. Roy Nelson's entire career revealed the UFC's ugliest truth. That performance matters only if it looks good in a poster. That fighting is secondary. Image is everything. They said he wasn't an athlete. He beat athletes. They said he wouldn't sell. He moved numbers. They said he didn't belong. He kept showing up and knocking people out. So why did they bury him? Because Roy was proof the system was broken. They couldn't control him, so they moved on from him. But here's the thing. You can rig the rankings, you can spin the press, You can cook the matchups, but you can't hide knockouts. And Roy Nelson had 16 of them. He was the glitch in their algorithm. And once the fans saw that, they started questioning everything. The UFC didn't just disrespect Roy. They lost money doing it. By refusing to build around him, they left billions on the table. Budweiser, Dickies, Home Depot. Why? Because they thought branding mattered more than truth. But Roy was truth. He was everything UFC fans secretly respected, even if Dana couldn't market it. Roy Nelson was everything that corporate MMA fears. Authentic, violent, and impossible to control. He knocked out legends while the UFC counted the money and overlooked his value. They wanted his fist, but were ashamed of his face. They used his chaos, then moved on from the man behind it. But the fans knew. They always knew. Roy didn't just punch people. He punched through the lie. That only the pretty ones succeed. That only the polished get remembered. That only the marketable get to matter. But Roy mattered, and he always will. He walked away undefeated in the only fight that ever mattered. The fight for respect.